everyone. It says, oh, there, the stream is live. I guess we're doing this. All right. So today we're going to talk. So Suze foolishly parted with actual money that could be spent on delightful things like pizza. And instead, she gave it to me to be like, I want to ask you questions. And so far, my understanding is that she wants to talk about how she's urban, right? Is urban the right word? You are in a city, inside a pretty good sized city, and there's been comedy with your plumbing, and you want to see if I have any thoughts about your plumbing. Something like that. Am I close?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I live in an urban homestead, I would say, a community, and we try to go for holistic permaculture principles, and we're artists and musicians, and so we live in an urban area. Sometimes I joke that we're in denial about living in an urban area, like we're pretending we're living off grid, but we're really on the grid. But we have a lot of permaculture and off grid systems in place, and we've had some comedy. I like the verbiage around that, comedy with our plumbing. Yes, very old plumbing, and needs a upgrade. So I'm curious to pick your brain about it.
And I think specifically the idea is that there's plumbing in the house, and the design is that all of your plumbing, whatever water or whatever you don't want, goes into tubes going under the building and away. And it goes to visit people at the sewage treatment plant, but that's up to them. I mean, they could do other things with it if they want.
Well, it doesn't go away. I mean, that's the crazy thing. There's no way.
That's the design. The design is that it goes away.
Well, it's actually but it is a septic system, so the waste, I mean, away, but still on site. Like, it's not going out to a sewage treatment facility. It's here.
Oh, so you're in a city, but you're using it's a septic tank with a drain field.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's old. I mean, my house was built in 1924, and it actually is on a cesspool. It's called a cesspool, and it has not been updated. We never connected to the city sewer system, which actually a bunch of houses in this neighborhood and in this city have not been connected. And that was kind of one of the conditions when I purchased this house is not on the grid, so to speak, in terms of the city sewage. We get water coming in, but whatever goes out is going into a cesspool, which is under a concrete slab on the north side of our house.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Exciting.
So now what has happened is that the exit pipes that go to the cesspool are not working as well as you had always hoped that they would. And somewhere is screwing things up. Okay. All right. And you're thinking like, well, some people that are not you, they would be like, it's time to get connected to the sewage system for the city. But you're thinking like, I want to leverage this opportunity to do something that's more permaculture aligned. And then you kind of got the weird idea to involve me in this. and of course, I have some very strong philosophies in this space, because I feel like sewage treatment plants, which are supposed to be the very best that we have for a city, they still put a lot of yuckiness into our rivers and oceans. And it's like, yeah. So, and at the same time, there's stuff that's like composting toilets and similar things down that road that some people do. And those are outlawed by a lot of cities and counties. And it's because of good reason. It's not like the design of the system is very good. Like the design of these composting toilets and whatever, they're very good. But for many of them, the implementation falls short. And so it turns out to be that the sewage treatment plant is considered to be like, oh, this is great because the way that we do it, people don't get sick, except the fact that we pollute rivers and oceans, which we're okay with, apparently. And from a permaculture perspective, it's like, okay, I want to have something where people don't get sick and I don't pollute the rivers and oceans. Now, a lot of the composting toilet kind of stuff, it turns out the implementations sometimes make people sick. And so it's kind of like, well, that didn't really work out great. And so many years ago, I developed what I call the willow feeder system. And I think that it's better than a sewage treatment plant. And we're starting to share our knowledge of this because we've gotten to the point where we think that the system is rock solid enough that it's time to share it. So, of course, that is going to be what I advocate for is the willow feeder system. So now we have willow feeders indoors and outdoors. And now you have some acres. And by acres, I mean like maybe a half an acre?
It's closer to, I think, a little over a quarter. So it's like a third. It's a third of an acre. Oh, I thought there was like a little scale. Oh, it must have gotten cropped when the let me see something. Must have gotten cropped when the image came up.
All right. A standard city lot is about a quarter of an acre, and a lot of that quarter of an acre is taken up with a house.
Okay, so it's 10,000 square feet. Because I have a double lot here.
Okay. 10,000 square feet sounds to me like about a quarter of an acre, which is a standard lot. But okay, maybe it is. Oh. Maybe there are lots that are even smaller. And so in your city, but okay, 10,000 square feet. So you've got this lot, and it's kind of got a backyard, and you're thinking my backyard is big, and it's like compared to others, having any backyard at all is indeed big. And so you're kind of thinking to yourself like, and now let's talk a little bit about like if you were to, because you're tempted to build something inside, and you're simultaneously tempted to build something outside. And
I think the idea is to do both, and just what the most practical priority is, given the fact that our existing system is failing or showing signs of failing. Is it even practical to consider an inside solution with the space that I have, or does it make more sense to focus on an outhouse type setup? That's like one of my questions. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the problem that you're having with your current system is that like a sink is draining fine, but the
this is actually that's not it. I meant stop. What we had an event 2 months ago, while I was out of town, ironically, the basement started backing up with sewage. So the main pipe that goes through the floor of the basement, and it's like it's the end of the line, the last pipe that goes to the cesspool system has a little like overflow valve, like an air thing, and it just started, like, sewage started coming out, like black water and other stuff apparently. And like I said, I was out of town, so my community member and housemate had to deal with it, which I felt very badly about. But yeah, that was like kind of the emergency, like so it was just kind of like all of the stuff started coming out of at the basement. So it wasn't really like even a draining problem, like it was like, oh, our sinks are backed up or something, or our toilet isn't flushing properly. It was more like just it wasn't out of nowhere, but it was a kind of sudden thing where all of a sudden the basement started filling up. Well, not filling up, but there was black water and material coming out of that pipe in the basement.
Okay.
And the plumber, so the plumbers came and they routed out, and like they did a quick fix thing. They routed out the stuff, and then they did a scope down there, and that's where they saw that there was the inlet pipe that goes to the cesspool was severely cracked. So they did a Band-Aid and said, this will probably be good for 6 months to a year, but you're going to have to get this fixed or connect to the city. And that was where we kind of left it. And since then, we haven't been using any toilet paper in our toilets, and try to be like more mindful about what gets flushed, just to prevent the clog from happening again sooner. But, again, this is where we're at with that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try to propose a thing, and then you're going to tell me how that thing is stupid. All right?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I want you to, and so I'm going to say a whole bunch of different things, and I want to get to the end before you tell me it's stupid.
Okay.
So
perfect.
All right.
I'm all ears.
I want you to dig a hole in your backyard that is something on the order of about I'm gonna say 6 feet deep and 6 feet across, and I want you to fill it up with wood chips, and then I want you to plant a couple of willow trees on either side of it, and then I want to get the plumbing in your house routed over to this. So this is called a mulch pit. And I want to get the plumbing routed over to it. There's a way that I want the plumbing to arrive to the mulch pit, and we can talk about that later if we remember to. And the idea is that this is going to be where all your gray water goes. And then inside you'll have a willow feeder that'll have a urine diverter, and the urine diverter will feed to the mulch pit. But the can that collects all the willow candy does not go to the mulch pit. But everything else in the house is routed to go to the mulch pit. Now, the cool, fun thing about that is that first of all, nothing with pathogens goes to the mulch pit, and so it's pretty safe in that respect. The big thing is it's like, okay, we want to make sure that none of this material is ending up in the groundwater, and it's kind of like, well, with your cesspool, or if you had a standard septic tank, then there would be parts of it that would be going out to the drain field. And the drain field would be 18 inches below the soil surface, and the bacteria are going to do a pretty good job of cleaning that up. But they don't do a perfect job, which is why cities and towns create a sewage treatment plant. and they require everybody to get on it because that way you have less poop Kool-Aid going to the groundwater. And so, so currently your system has some degree of poop Kool-Aid going to the groundwater. And so now with all of these wood chips and these willow trees, what's going to happen is that during the spring and the summer, any gray water that comes through because there's zero poop Kool-Aid coming out to the mulch pit now, because we're processing that a completely different way. But there's still stuff that's coming out there, and it's kind of like, all right, whatever it is that does make, there's a mulch pit right there. There's an image. And so can we zoom in on that a little bit, Andreas? And so then anything that goes out there is kind of like it's going to be treated a lot like as if it were going out to a drain field. So you still have all those bacteria trying to polish it, but they have less work to do. It's easier for them. And then if there's any nutrient that you want to not go to the groundwater, it kind of gets stuck to the high carbon wood chips. However, the willow trees, once they get their roots in there, they're going to effectively polish all of those wood chips during the spring and summer. And then during the cold months, they're still going to be eating most of that, but they're going to be doing about half as much. They're somewhat dormant in the winter, but they're still active at polishing those wood chips. But if there's anything that they miss, it gets locked up by the wood chips. Then when the willow tree comes back out of dormancy, it's going to resume polishing. And in fact, it's going to consume a whole bunch of stuff that accumulated over the winter that it may have missed. And so basically the idea is that what goes to the groundwater is maybe 1% of what you're currently sending to the groundwater. It's much, much less. All right. So there's that. Then the next thing is that you're going to have this can inside of your building, and you'll need to have a urine diverter in it that routes to this mulch pit. And at the same time, we need to vent the box that the can sits in. We need to vent it to the outside. And let's just pretend for the moment that it's hooked up to electricity and it just uses this 2 watts or something like that to carry air out of the box to outside through a vent in the roof or something. Let's just pretend that that's what's going on. And so now all the people in the house will use this can. And how many people on average do you think there are in the house?
5.
5 people. All right. I would guess that that's going to fill about 4 cans per year, maybe less, but let's just say it's 4. And so then that means that outside you would need to have a place to store, let's say 10 cans. And so when it gets to be something around like mid to late spring, then take each of the cans that are older than 2 years old, and then you're going to take the material out of those cans and spread it out in the drip line of the willow tree, but probably not the mulch pit, but around the willow tree. And then when you're done doing that, you'll put it like another, say, inch or 2 of sawdust on top of that. And you'll find that, the willow tree will be very happy. Any grasses that are out there will be incredibly happy, things of that nature. And so, all right, there you go. This is a system that we call it the willow feeder system. And nothing goes to a sewage treatment plant, and nothing more will go to your pit that you have below the house. Everything instead will be transformed into giant willow trees. That's what I propose. And I believe that this design is better for the environment than a sewage treatment plant. It's cleaner, it's safer. It has less pathogen vectors than a sewage treatment plant, while simultaneously being so much better for the environment. And and unlike most of the alternatives to a sewage treatment plant, this will scale. And I like to think that this is so much better than a sewage treatment plant that regulators will, in time, reward willow feeders. So, like, encourage people to do it. The other thing is that the expense of connecting, of getting all your stuff hooked up to the sewage treatment plant, I'm going to guess is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 grand or more.
Actually, it's $40,000 because the city of Portland.
Oops. Oh!
Well, the cat's out of the bag. It's a it's 22 grand, 20 grand just as a connection fee. That's without any construction, any nothing. Just
okay. So, I could be mistaken, but I think that if you paid somebody to do all the things I just described, I would imagine it would come in a lot less than that.
I think so too. I have a couple questions for you. I'll start with the fact that we depaved our driveway, and we have on the east side of the property. Can we look at that map again quickly? The east side of our property, there's a depaved driveway, and along that driveway, I have planted some willows. I have a whole little row of willow trees already planted. So yes, on the east side, so that strip just on the right, that's our driveway. And I have a row of willow trees that I've planted. I just planted them for privacy screen and basket materials and stuff like this. And they're pretty mature at this point. And the driveway is just basically mulch. I mean, it's wood chips because we depaved it. It's all, it says wood chips and plants at this point. And we don't use it very much. We don't actually walk there hardly at all. So I'm wondering about implementing this, the willow feeder system, if we can work with these existing plants that are already here. I feel like the location would really be ideal in terms of not disrupting the flow of our backyard situation. And that would be a great location. So, the trees, again, they're kind of, I guess I don't really have a cursor way to point, but they're pretty much like in a line, like just to the right of the main house itself on the edge. They're kind of planted as, a kind of a living fence type situation on the edge of the driveway, which has been depaved. So that's just one thought, and again, the idea would be digging into that area and then maybe disturbing the roots of the willows a little bit in the process, and what you think about that. Because again, I'm just like literally looking out the window at these willows and thinking, oh yeah, like that would be a great location for the gray water mulch pit. And just wondering what you think about that. That's one of my, I don't know if I should list my questions all first, or should we just do one at a time here?
I think yes. I'm glad we had this chat. So working with established willow trees sounds far better to me than getting some willow trees started, because while you create the pit, it is plausible that you're going to disturb some of the roots as you're doing this. And willow trees are kind of weird about that. They're going to be like, well, I'll show you. I'm going to make some more willow trees, and then you just try to cope. And it's like, so it'll all work out. It'll be terrific.
Okay.
So I think that's a really good idea.
It's really, and again, the location feels for this, if we were going to implement the system and have the mulch pit there, that looks great. Cool. Well, that's good to know. My other question, so is about the black, well, the black material, or like you said, the poop.
Willow
Um,
candy.
Willow candy. I like the name. So you said that the indoor system works with these cans. Is a can something that just lives in your bathroom itself, and then you move them to like they're like larger hard to move things, and then it's kind of like 4 times a year you move it out into like another area for composting, and then like I'm just thinking about trying to visualize the size. It's that. Aha.
Yeah, it's a 32. We have standardized on a 32-gallon brute can. I wish
Okay.
we had something that wasn't plastic, but we haven't figured that. We haven't solved that yet.
Okay.
But the key is that yeah, you're probably gonna every 3 months you're gonna need to do what we do, which is it's full enough. We're gonna put a bunch of sawdust on the top, and then you need to take it outside, and it needs to stay outside for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
And then once it's hits that time, then in the spring it could be put at the foot of a willow tree.
Yeah.
And so
but the brute can live. Is this like, are you pooping into a bucket and then transferring the bucket to the brute can, or is the brute can
never.
like actually in? Okay, I see. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
So the brute
So
can
here
is
you
actually
can see an image. Whoop! I moved on to another. Can we go? If we can go back. Where there it is. On the left side,
yes.
in this image, you can see our indoor willow feeder.
Okay.
So it sits up higher, but there's
yes.
a place to put your feet.
Okay.
And the idea is that can, with several people, with 5 people, I think it'll take it about 3 or 4 months until the can will need to be pulled out.
Okay.
And what'll happen is that there is some degree of composting that's happening. And basically our particular system, we wish for it to not compost. We want to do our best we want to keep it aerobic. And if there's going to be a little bit of composting, we will accept that.
Oh, there we go. That's what I want to look at. Okay.
And so, but for the most part, as gardeners, we want to try to keep as much of that material around, so that way we can have a bigger willow tree. We can make the willow tree happy. So some people use these systems, and then they do something with the willow candy, so that way they don't have to empty it as often. And I'm going to stay out of that. They want to do that. That's up to them. What I'm trying to do is to develop a system that is dramatically superior to a sewage treatment plant. And so something that scales for a large city. And so that's what I'm working on. And that's what that's what this system is attempting to be.
And the indoor, there's not really a big difference between the indoor and outdoor system, except for the outdoor system is going to be in and out house, because that was another thing, is that we do have, although we're a small community, i.e. like 5 artists and musicians living in this small house in our urban homestead, we host events, we host pizza parties, and sometimes we have up to 60 folks. They're not all pooping necessarily, but we'll have a really like an influx. We'll have periodic influxes of large, we'll have house show or a workshop or a pizza party, and there'll be lots of folks, and that's where kind of an outdoor, makes sense. Also, we have some kind of what they called it, accessory dwelling unit type places where there's no plumbing or bathroom for some of the folks living out there. They might also like an outhouse kind of. So I do want to build an outhouse as well. That's very cool. Look at this cool graphic. I want to build an outhouse too, and I'm just wondering if the kind of layout and system is pretty similar for indoor and outdoor, without minus the plumbing to the urine diverter and plumbing to the mulch field.
So, Andreas, can you bring up an image of Willow Wonka? So here we have our outdoor willow feeder, and and the cans are still the same size, but we have a little platform that you can walk onto up there, so it feels the same as a standard toilet. And this is entirely outdoors, and we're in Montana, which is a bit colder, and so I suspect that nearly everybody watching this is thinking like, oh, then you would use this just in the summer. And I need to point out that we have some sturdy folk that choose to contribute in the winter, even on a pretty cold day. But I think when it gets really cold, I suspect those people are like, I'm going indoors. But there have been some people proud of how they were able to use this in the winter. All right, so it can be done.
And the urine diverter in this case, do you have another mulch pit for it?
We have another mulch pit. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
And we have little baby willow trees with it, and so they're coming up to speed and stuff like that. So
what is that? Is that for air? What is that? Or is that where the urine is going? That pipe there that we're looking at?
I think I'm gonna guess that pipe right there is for the sink.
There's
also
a sink
gray water, but I'd have to go look at it to be sure if it's. But it could potentially also be the urine diverter, so the urine.
Okay. Oh, nice. Very cool.
All right.
Okay.
So,
looking good.
And we have events where we have more than 50 people here, and we have 2 outdoor willow feeders that they can use, and we have the house that they can go to if they want. And so, and it seems to be enough. We because, like you pointed out, people tend to not be synchronized poopers. They're not like we're all going to poop at the same time. And it's like it's spread out over the day, and it turns out to be like not a big deal. I think we've had some people suggest that we make another willow feeder and put it up on the far end of our property where a lot of people like to put their tents. And it's like, it's a thought, and we haven't gotten around to it yet. But we might someday do that. So, all right, let's now circle back to your situation. I have made a suggestion, and the beautiful thing about the suggestion is that, or at least one of the beautiful things is that it's so much less expensive than the conventional route, hooking up to the sewage treatment plant. I choose to believe that what I've suggested is far superior to what you would get with a sewage treatment plant. I have yet to be able to hear an argument about how it's not. So from anybody where we've presented this idea. So I think it's pretty rock solid. But perhaps you have an idea of something else that you were thinking of, and I can poop on that idea.
I was gonna maybe ask if JB wants to talk a little bit. He just muted himself, but because JB and I were discussing some different options and ideas, and I thought, because he's jumping in on this call, and because I'm hoping he's going to be available to help with this project, that he could give some of his experience and feedback and thoughts about, because he's familiar also with my specific house and my situation, and we've been working together a long time. And yeah, I would love to hear if JB, you're open to asking some questions or talking about some thoughts you might have about a system that would work here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of discussed it. We spoke more upon like having a smaller bucket that would get emptied frequently into a larger bucket. Um, but I definitely like this idea. I think sometimes an urban home, I mean, I guess your bathroom there that you had photos of is just an urban home sized bathroom. So I guess it's the user case use of, do you want to drag a 32-gallon brute bucket through? Is there a problem with taking 5-gallon buckets out to a bucket outside, and
Well,
dumping
let's
them in
talk
there?
about that.
Yeah,
So
because
first of all,
you said no, not you don't do that, but is there a problem with it and you just don't do it?
all right. So the humanure system is a popular system, and it features a 5-gallon bucket. And so you'll have this 5-gallon bucket. So the level that you sit at is easier, right? It's more conventional. Um, but this 5-gallon bucket in the humanure systems for one person generally needs to be emptied twice a week. And
Yeah,
so um, now I don't know if you've ever done that, but
I have, and it increases like the contact points many more
and,
times, and so
and
I
when
we're
you're
can
just
see
getting
living,
why you
started.
don't want.
yeah.
So yeah. So now, like, let's assume that there's a pathogen in there that
Mm,
you don't want to be in contact with.
right.
And so there probably isn't, because it's just you, just one person. But if you've got 5 people, and
Mm-hmm.
let's say one of them has an illness that they have managed to hide from you, and you could get it from that material, suddenly it's a thing, right? It's a something that is a concern now. And you don't even know that you should be concerned because this person has been so discreet about it and you don't know. And part of it is like you don't want to go and grill everybody. Hey, do you got some kind of illness that you're hiding from the rest of us because it could make us sick? I think you don't want to ever have that conversation. And so it's like, okay, let's
Yeah.
And
let's
the
come up
elephant
with
yeah,
let's,
the elephant in the room
let's
for me is just the challenges of living in community with a bunch of crazy musicians and artists and trying to make sure people are accountable, especially where there's a learning curve around dealing with your, let's call it candy, dealing with your candy. Like most of us are not used to that. I have lived off grid for periods of time and like used these systems before, but some of my community, my housemates, while they're aligned with some of the principles of permaculture, they're not necessarily permies in the sense they're artists, musicians, and you know, getting folks to really be on board with like regular gardening and cleaning the house is enough of a challenge. And one of my main concerns about a human manure system is maintenance. And so I feel what Paul is proposing is a lot more like, even though schlepping the um, poop laden 30-gallon, like that feels awkward for sure. But if it only happens 4 times a year, then it's probably a better way to go than trying to rely on people to follow through with emptying a bucket regularly, because I feel like I'm going to be the one. I would rather be the one to do it like 4 times a year and just like kind of get a crew together and be like, all right, today's the day we're going to move this thing out of here. And then, just trying to be on top of everybody on a, basically daily basis. Like, it's like your turn to take the poop bucket out and blah, blah, blah. Like, because I'm going to be doing it, or me and my husband will be the ones doing it. And I just don't want to, I don't want to have to do that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
and it
feel like,
presents better to the authorities to have less contact. So I can see why just doing the larger bucket. I mean, if I was doing an outdoor one, you would just use a 50-gallon drum or whatever you could move around feasibly, 32 gallons, 50 gallons. So it makes sense. And 32-gallon brute thing isn't going to get that heavy full.
right. It's not going to be that heavy because we're diverting the urine, so it's going to be
Yeah.
relatively dry. It won't be dry, but it'll be dry-ish, and so it
Mm-hmm.
won't be as heavy. But we usually find one person can oftentimes do the grunty work, maybe the help of a hand truck would be nice, but a lot of times 2 people make it easy. And so, but now I'm going to go back about 6 minutes to what I was starting to say. And I think it's a very, very important part of all this. If somebody in your house is ill and you don't want to have that conversation with them, you need to design a system that's going to be able to keep everybody safe despite that one secret illness. Because not only, so like let's allow that person to have their secrets. And then we just are going to design a system so well that they can keep their secret. It's not going to impact us. But yes, if you're using a 5-gallon bucket, the vector factor is more substantial, because while you're not exactly coming into contact with the material, you kind of are a little bit. Now, with the 32-gallon container, when you start to get within 5 inches of the top, we say that before you even touch the container, you then add 3 inches of sawdust on top. That would be hard to do with the 5-gallon bucket. And then on top of that, with the human manure system, that's not generally suggested. Instead, you take the bucket, which is generally full to the top because people have optimized how long they can wait until it's emptied. And then they take it outside and then they put it in a pile. Now, granted, you've not suggested doing that. I'm just saying that it's, for the human manure system, that's the system. But the delightful thing is that a 5-gallon bucket is, of course, a lot lighter than a 32-gallon bucket. Now, the great thing about the 32-gallon can is that the material tends to decompose in place rather substantially. And so the reason why it takes months to fill up is that the material keeps getting put in and it continues to shrink over the months as more material is added to the top. And so it just keeps breaking down and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And so it makes it so it's a much longer time. So a person could try to math it out and say, why does a 5-gallon bucket need to be swapped out every like twice a week, or even if it was like once a week, and this is a 32-gallon container, wouldn't this mean that you're going to have to swap it out in 6.5 weeks or something? And it's like, nope, that's because it does break down and shrink a lot over those 6 weeks. And now there's more room in the 32-gallon bucket to accept more. And you can just keep putting more and more and more in. So our experience is 3 to 4 months until we need to swap it out. So that's kind of,
you are layering like wood shavings or sawdust on top like every time, right? Like that's like the standard human manure situation.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. And so that's what you could, if you wanted to, you could do wood ash, but my guess is that if you're urban, you probably don't have a lot of wood ash.
We do. We actually have we have our rocket stoves, and we actually heat our house with a masonry heater, and we're kind of like I said, we're really kind of off the grid, on the grid. So
okay,
we have it, but or we could I have a friend who's a wood turner, and he has he's our neighbor, and he has like giant quantities of wood shavings as well, so we could kind of mix it up, or coffee holes. I don't know. There's all types of material around.
We have lots of wood ash, and we have lots of wood chips and sawdust. I think sawdust is the best. And so, but I do want to emphasize to anybody listening to this, don't mix the two. Don't do like wood chips or sawdust and mix in wood ash. Don't mix them. Pick one or the other, and I personally choose the sawdust and wood chips. All right, so I think so you thought about a 5-gallon bucket approach at one point in time. I hope I've talked you out of that. Have I? Okay. All right. Okay. What are there any other ideas that you were considering that I could poop on?
I'm actually just curious why mixing wood ash and sawdust is a problem. It's a different type of environment that it's breaking down in, and it kind of cancels itself out, or what?
Do you know how to make lye?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Tell me.
Boiling ash, it concentrates it into a
Or fermenting water.
Yeah.
Generally, it's a mix of wood ash and straw and water.
Right.
And then that's so straw is a high carbon material, and so is the wood chips or sawdust. And so basically, if you're going to use wood ash and sawdust together, and then you're going to add some moisture to it, you're effectively going to be dabbling a little bit in the space of making lye. And now you have poison mixed into your willow candy. And later you're thinking about feeding that to your willow trees. I don't think I would rather not feed lye to my willow trees.
Right. That's very caustic and terrible. Yes. Okay. I was just curious about that. That makes all the sense now that you explain it. Let's see. I guess, I wanted to break your brain because I hadn't had any specific system ideas, and I'm trying to visualize this idea and think about if there's any other questions. I am really also intrigued with the gray water mulch pit idea, and I think we could hopefully, without too much trouble, get everything routed to I guess one of the things about gray water systems is getting the water uphill, or like up, like from the basement up to the level of or how do you?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
What?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a gray water situation. Yeah. I have to think about that. That's kind of a challenge.
A lot of people with septic tanks, I mean, they've got pumps that do that. And so it's possible that there's a solution for that is outside of what for me, I'm thinking okay, I don't have any structures with basements, and my mulch pits are outdoors, and they are always downhill of whatever it is, any of my drains.
And I guess that's elegant, but I mean, I guess also, I suppose I could just have everything above on the first level be going into the mulch pit, and then the basement level could potentially continue to just drain into the cesspool if it was just, laundry or something. I don't know.
I mean, they do make little pump boxes oftentimes in Oregon in the basement, and there's you basically, I mean, usually just your laundry goes to it, not your plumb, not anything that comes out of your body,
right?
Or there's some hand washing material, and then it will just pump it out.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
We can look into that. JB, do you have any other ideas about the humanure kind of stuff, or anything for Paul, or questions about his system that might be helpful if we were looking at designing and implementing that here?
No, I think it's a good system. I don't know that there is anything better than the plastic 32-gallon size containers. So
I wish we could come up with something better in that space. I do think I want to respect Joseph Jenkins, the creator of the Humanure Handbook. I mean, I feel like our willow feeder system it wouldn't exist without the Joseph Jenkins and the amazing research that he did in the Humanure book. I just kind of feel like our stuff is built on top of his stuff. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm just bashing Joseph Jenkins. I want to make it clear that we are respecting his work and trying to take it to the what we believe, what I believe is the next level, the next thing beyond it. And I also want to point out that the willow feeder system is something we've been working on for 12 years. The idea actually came up 14 years ago, and we've been having to refine it and refine it and refine it. And now we think we've got it working very reliably. And so it's time to start sharing our results. So we just started sharing results a few months ago.
That's exciting. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Great. I totally understand. Like I would like to sway away from the 5-gallon bucket all day long. And, here it's a little warm enough that you can do these systems outside pretty much year round. There's a couple months where you're a little chilly, but we would usually go to a 50-gallon drum and just move it with a dolly. And I mean, what would be your ideal, this isn't about size bucket, because the bigger bucket's great. What is your ideal 32-gallon container that you would prefer to have over plastic? Would it be metal? Would it be, obviously not something that decomposes, because that's kind of risky. So what, if you could do better than plastic with your imagination, what would that be, Paul?
Boy, that is tough. And one of the great things about releasing this system and getting it out there is that we feel like there's room for optimization. And when we get more people involved, more engineers, more great minds, then we'll start to get people trying other things, and we can have things that we can learn about. I know, like, for example, our urine diverters still need optimization, and but we're getting good results despite that. But as for a can that's not plastic, I would like something that we could make with the materials that we have here. And so what would that be? And I kind of feel like, well, there used to be such a thing as wooden barrels that were about this size, but boy, they would be there. I mean, when a wooden barrel is empty, it is ridiculously heavy. And so it's like, oh, that sounds like it's got challenge written all over it. And so what else is there? And I don't really have a good answer. I mean, we could talk about some stainless steel barrels. That might be a step in the right direction. I know a guy that makes stainless steel barrels, and so maybe I should talk to him about like 32-gallon barrels, and that might not be a bad idea, especially if we can get something, rather than having the straight sides, if it could have a little bit of a tapered side to it. But because then, if anything, if the contents were to freeze, then the contents would just go up. Whereas if you've got, straight sides and the contents were to freeze, it might try to force the barrel to have a new shape. But I kind of feel like that, because a stainless steel barrel's pretty light, and it's going to last a long time, and it's not plastic. And so maybe, so you're asking me, like, what would be my dream material? And it's like, preferably something I can build with the rocks and mud and sticks that I have here on hand, but nothing comes to mind that really works there. So it's like, okay, well, because like when we build rocket mass heaters, there are parts of rocket mass heaters that it's like, okay, we need something that's insulative and can tolerate more than 2,000 degrees. And it's kind of like, I looked out in the woods, I didn't find anything. So it's like, I guess we're going to use something manufactured. And along the way, hey, in fact, you guys heat with a rocket mass heater built by Ernie and Erica or guided
Yeah,
by Ernie?
well, we have an outbuilding that has a bed, a rocket mass heater bed that Ernie and Erica we built with them back in 2013 or 14. It was a long time ago. And then we have our music area, kind of like a converted garage that we insulated with straw clay, has a like nice big one that we built with Bernard Masterson. And then we have but in the main house, we have I call it the Cadillac super fancy Tule Kiwi. So we have the really nice
The
fancy
messy.
Cadillac stove. I had a similar situation come up for myself as a homeowner in an urban area where my central heating furnace crapped out, and instead of spending all the money on getting a new furnace, I decided to spend it on a Tule Kiwi, which I am really happy with. It burns really clean and heats the whole house. It's just so lovely to have that. I mean, it's just the nicest heat around. I love it so much. But yeah, it's actually a very similar situation.
With the Russian
Tule-
mass heater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I can.
So,
Here, I'll show it to you.
mason heater.
Right here. It's a masonry. It's a masonry stove, but it's kind of
Wow. It's big.
it's big. Yeah, it has a big. I mean, and we have a small house, but it's really it's really nice. And it's just so in the winter it's just so amazing. It really just it does a great job heating our entire home and keeping it warm. And because it's not too terribly cold here where we live, it's just lovely, and we don't have any other type of heat in our home. So, but it was a similar. Our system failed, and we made a decision to do something different and more sustainable. And so this is kind of another iteration of that here, where we have a failing septic system that we're looking at doing something different and more in alignment with our values. I mean, coming back to where we started talking about, yes, like saving money, but it's really at the end of the day about aligning with values. And as someone who's lucky to live in the Pacific Northwest, where we do have a lot of rain, it's still getting drier, and I don't think it's going to get less dry anytime soon. And I just have always felt like I wanted to respect our precious water and, treat it better. And by pooping in it is it's not the way to go. And it's not what I want to do. It's not aligned with my personal value system. And so I feel like it's more of an opportunity. The crisis is an opportunity for me to take that step to invest in a system that aligns with my values. And this is looking like it. And I will say again, I really do feel good about this willow feeder system, especially with the larger can. I mean, I think it is going to be a challenge in terms of the size of our bathroom. Our bathroom is quite, I mean, won't say it's cramped. It's very small. We saw those photos. It's a small bathroom. And so trying to figure out how to situate the commode in a way that feels like it's not I'm going to show the pictures of the bathroom. Yeah, I mean it's it's like 50 by 60 inches. It's a comfortable size with what's happening now, but we're going to have to do some designing, and I feel good about that. And I'm also thinking about designing how that urine diverter is going to be. That'll be a plumbing challenge to figure out how to connect the urine diverter possibly with whatever is coming out of the shower and the sink to go out to the mulch pit. But that will all be part of the fun, I suppose.
I've got maybe two more questions, Paul. One,
okay.
how often are you finding you're replenishing the chips in your mulch pit? And two, what are you doing with those chips as the pit begins to fill up over the years, if you've experienced that? And do you, I guess 3 questions, the salt content in that material. So let's say you've got one of these things going, it's been 20 years, you're now finding yourself abundant and decomposed urine wood chips, and you need to potentially dig some out, and the levels of salt in there have gotten high. What's happening there?
Well, first of all, let me take your question and ask you like the exact same question for your current system. And so, do you know if your current system has a drain field?
I don't. I mean I'm pretty sure it's like a pit. It's like a big pit in the ground. And I
There's
don't
no
think
drain. There's no drain field on it.
right.
So, all right. So normally, let me talk about. So I'm not familiar with your system, but I am familiar with a septic tank and drain field. So a septic tank is like 1,000 gallons, and it's split into 2 or 3 cells, and it's got giant baffles on the inside, and it will in time fill and need to be drained. The average American septic tank needs to be drained every 4 years. It needs to be pumped every 4 years. However, a good permaculture septic tank could go 30, 40, 50 years, maybe even 100 years before it would need to be pumped out. Because as you put organic matter into it, if you are being nice to the creatures living in there and using and only putting material down the drain that will make them happy, they will break down all the organic matter. But still, in the middle, there's going to be this kind of poop Kool-Aid that goes to the drain field. So if you put 200 gallons of water in, then 200 gallons of poop Kool-Aid goes into the drain field and it gets drained out. So somehow your pit probably has some way of releasing the liquid part of what goes in there. And so I don't know what that is. But let's just go back to a septic tank with a drain field, and let me respond as if that's what you have, because that's what I know. And the question would be, how often do you need to dig up that drain field in order to whatever? And the answer is never. It'll keep going for like, I don't know, hundreds of years of being a drain field, unless something went wrong, something happened, some bad thing happened to it, in which case it might need to be replaced. But the septic tank itself, if you're good permies and you're very careful about what you put into your septic tank, then yeah, you should be able to go 100 years or more until you need to have things pumped out of the septic tank. Most people need to have their septic tank pumped because they're using antibacterial soap. And it's like, yeah, but the bacteria that gobble up the poopy bits and the organic matter inside of your septic tank, they are bacteria. So if you're using antibacterial soap, you're killing those guys that are working for you. And so you're screwing yourself. Other people will flush things down the toilet that'll say, you can flush this down the toilet. And really the answer is, don't do that. So flushable wipes are a great example. Don't flush those ever. They just accumulate inside your septic tank, and now you're going to pump it out even sooner. Feminine hygiene products, don't flush those. I don't think there's any of them that will do well inside of a septic tank. Most of them contain a lot of plastics, and so they'll just accumulate there. So that doesn't go down there. But so you're asking me, how often do I have to dig up those wood chips? I'm thinking something in the space of damn near never. It is probable that you might want to add more wood chips at some point on top of the pile. But there's also going to be, like, as the willows enjoy that space in there, they're going to reach in there and grow and become larger and raise it up. But those wood chips should, in time, break down, as you're pointing out. We haven't had mulch pits long enough, and again, we're sharing our results now, but there's like a lot of room for optimization, and there's decades more knowledge to gather. And so I'm looking forward to finding out, like, what is the next generation of a mulch pit going to be? Like, what do you need to do 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road? We haven't gotten that far down the road yet.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a great answer to your good question. And, but I suspect it's going to be pretty easy, and it's not going to be a concern. The worst of it's going to be that the wood chips will in time decompose. But I want to say I've also seen piles of wood chips that were 40 years old, and they were the same size as when they were put there. And it's because, but they didn't have high nitrogen material coming into contact with them either. They just had rain. And while there is some nitrogen that comes with rain, those piles lasting 40 years show that it didn't touch the pile.
But the idea
I'm
is
not sure. So basically I'm saying, okay, you found a weak spot in the entire design, and that it's new. And so we don't have a lot of knowledge of, like, what's the 20-year thing look like.
Sure.
I do have a
The
mulch
idea is
pit
that
that I've had for 2 years that I've been using for my gray water, and it's the chips have gone down a couple of inches, but that's all. And I wouldn't feel like I ever had to take them out. I think the trees just eat the material, and
right, that's what I was going to say. The trees eat.
I might add more, but I should never have to remove them.
What type of chips are the best for? Would you use cedar chips?
Well, I would never use cedar chips.
Okay.
But normally what I say when people ask that question, before somebody says cedar chips, because no one's ever said cedar chips before, what I usually say is, because they're like, what's the best? And it's like, oh, I could talk about the best. But well,
it's what
really
we have. We have a lot of cedar chip. Like, it's like what's on hand. That's why I asked. But
yeah. That's going to probably, okay. What's on hand is almost always the answer.
Unless it's cedar.
But unless it's cedar, don't use cedar chips. I mean, cedar has a bunch of stuff woven into it to make growies sad. Have you ever been to a beautiful cedar grove and you're like, oh, this place is so beautiful. I can walk between the cedars so easily. It's so nice. And it's like, where's all the other growies? And it's the cedar killed him.
Right.
So the cedar poisoned him. And so basically it's like, okay, now how do you feel about putting that next to a willow tree? I think the willow tree ain't going to like it.
Right.
So cedar's not a great choice. You want something that's going to rot well. And so, but most people, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, are going to be like, oh man, I got so much conifer stuff that's not cedar. I've got pine and fir and spruce. I've got it by the metric ton. And so that turns out to be what most people use. Now, if you want to see what's the best, it's like, well, hardwood. I would say alder or cottonwood or something like that. Maybe birch. But most people don't have that.
Right. Got it. Very good. This is sounding good. I really like the system, and I really like there's a gray water component in, it's all built in. Do you have any of these plans and systems like available or published or somewhere online, or this is like you're like, I'm so glad you asked. No, I was just
I will say that Andreas and I have been working very hard the last couple of months, and we hope to come up with a Kickstarter soon for a movie and plans and a draft ebook. And so
Wow.
I know that already this morning I worked on the draft ebook, and I'm pretending that Andreas was probably working on one of the sets of plans. So some of the images that you saw are images that he's been putting together for the draft plans. And the movie is like a good 80% done. And one of the draft plans looked like it was 95% done. And I understand that here in a couple of hours, Andreas is going to be showing me the other set of plans. And the ebook is on me, and I've been working on. I'd say that the ebook is maybe a little more than half done right now. And so it's a race to see who will finish all the artifacts first. So hopefully we'll have something soon. But we've been putting out YouTube videos, and we've been updating a bunch of threads at Permies with a bunch of information, and we're trying to do our best to share what we have learned so far, and I hope it will be received well. I hope that thousands and thousands of other people will implement it and then start to optimize all of these systems, and we'll all grow as a community. And that this is just the first step. But I think there's plenty of room for optimization, whereas I think a sewage treatment plant is pretty much optimized as far as it can go. So I do believe, and I've got a lot to say about how I think this is a dramatic improvement. Now, I do have one question for you, and I kind of feel like this is going to be, because like let's say you put a sign up inside of a shower, and it says, everything that goes down the drain goes out to our willow tree. Please don't put anything down the drain that could make our willow tree sad. Now, you might want to change the poetry of that, but the bottom line is that what products do people use in the shower or in a bathroom sink that, before, people just don't think about it. They just send all kinds of junk down the drain, and it doesn't matter. They can go get any product they want. But, how are people going to feel about, not putting product down, and what's that going to look like? And how's it? I mean, I think that's the key. But part of it is that once people are aware that anything they put in there could kill the willow tree, suddenly how they choose to live their lives could be at least a little different.
I think that's awesome. And I will say that we're mostly pretty natural, like Dr. Bronner's-y kind of folks. Is Dr. Bronner's not good? Look at the face. I'm like, I don't know. We're pretty basic we don't use like fragrancy, like super commercial gross soaps and antibacterial stuff, but we're not like super strictly gray water either. And there probably is a lot of research that needs to happen, at least on my part, to educate myself and others about what products are appropriate. And you probably know a lot more about this, but I think people would be I think most of us would be, I'm just thinking about our very specific community right now, and who uses like products and what type of products people do use. But I would say for the most part, we are in the more natural realm of product use. However, I don't know. Maybe again, I'm curious. What is your opinion of Dr. Bronner's? Is it
once you start to think about, like, you could kill the willow tree,
right?
Then it's like you kind of got one shot. I mean, if all your willow trees die suddenly because of something somebody put down the drain,
right?
Then it's like that's the weakness of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but on the other hand, it's like, how do you feel about putting Dr. Bronner's down the sink, and then the Dr. Bronner's goes into the river and into the ocean?
Right. Well, that's what I think too. I wish I could show you willow trees back here. There's some really pretty big willow trees that we got going on. But yeah, no, that's the thing. There is no way. That was what I studied a lot with Tom Ward, now Hazel, for years, and that was something that Hazel would always say, there is no way, which I really always love to think about, because I do feel that way. And yeah, knowing that you could kill the willow tree is really not different than poisoning all of the rivers and fish and all of the trees that are that are in our water systems that are getting poisoned by all of our waste constantly. So
Yeah, and it's like, it's just, and we've kind of embraced it as like, let people buy all the poison that they want and send it down the drain all they want, because it's a way. And yeah, it's killing off the coral reefs, and it's like causing all this other massive damage to the ocean, which is so huge and so deep, and yet it's being so brutally damaged, and our rivers are being destroyed. And it's kind of like, all right, how much of this are we going to personally own? And it's like, well, my footprint is less than my neighbor's, so I have license to keep doing. And I'm kind of thinking, like, can we at least think about it a little bit? Now, I'm going to say a thing which I think a lot of people will hear as being crazy, but for the last 15 years, I have not used any soap or shampoo in the shower of any kind. And so we refer to it as pure water. And I still shower every day, but I don't use any soap or shampoo. And look, I got curly hair, and granted, I'm a little bald, but I've been a little bald for 15 years. In fact, maybe it's even more hair than 15 years ago. I don't know. But it is a path that I have chosen because I have concerns about soaps, including Dr. Bronner's, going down the drain and being a poison. And so it's like, okay, how can I do better? And so I experimented with it because I'd heard of it. I didn't invent it. And it worked well for me. It worked really well.
I know, but look at my hair. I don't know if Samantha has anything to say about. I mean, I have I have very long hair. I just feel like I need to shampoo my hair.
I've got a lot of hair.
do you shower? Do you use soap?
I don't use soap or shampoo, and I haven't for probably 2, maybe 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that works good for your hair.
It works way better than when I used to use shampoo and conditioner. I just thought I never could get enough shampoo or conditioner on my hair, and it was always a tangled mess. And I just thought I wasn't spending enough money on products. I wasn't using enough of the products.
Well, that's what they want you to think, right?
So I when I stopped using anything, I did do kombucha vinegar rinse a few times. But I haven't even done that for like probably over a year. And my hair is really way nicer than it used to be.
I think it takes like a week or two to transition, because your natural system for your hair care has been repressed for decades. And now you've got this other pattern. And then for the first several days or weeks or something like that, your hair will seem to be greasy, but that's because that's the shampoo. It left a residue in your hair, and it's going to be a while until you can get rid of that. And then the natural oils of what you put into your hair yourself are going to take a while to come back and do their job. And so, but I kind of feel like it sounds crazy to most people, but then it's kind of like, all right, I am never going to drink Dr. Bronner's, but that's kind of where my mind goes. I kind of think about that. Like, if I'm not going to drink it, why am I going to make this willow tree drink it? And it's like, okay, so what is the answer? And, for us, step one, I don't use any soap or shampoo in the shower. And then at our sink, we've got the Oasis brand
Right.
soap that's for gray water systems. And so it's
Yeah.
actually a plant fertilizer. But
I'm
even
familiar
still,
with
even still, when I go to clean, like if I've got a greasy plate, step one, I go and let the cats have a go at it. So I'm going to get some of the grease off the plate and replace it with cat spit. And at the same time, less grease in my plumbing is always a good thing.
Right.
And I do think that cleaning cat spit off of a plate is harder to do than cleaning the grease off. But I'm going to give it a hit with some hot water and give it a good scrub. And usually I didn't have to use any soap at all.
Right.
And it's like, but if I feel like I can still feel a little grease on there, because that's another thing too, is like a lot of people don't realize soap or detergent, it's an emulsifier. It's not a sterilizing agent. It's an emulsifier. Its function is to connect to oils and greases and make them water soluble. That's its function. So if there's no oils or greases on the plate, using soap doesn't help.
Right.
And so it would just be a waste. Now, all that said, I'm not going to drink this detergent either, but it is designed to be a gray water plant food, which makes me think that it is probably 100 times better, maybe 1,000 times better in a gray water system than Dr. Bronner's.
Right.
I could be wrong about that. It's a lot of guessy guess on my part.
Well, that's part of
teeth with Dr. Bronner's, though.
What's that?
It says you can brush your teeth with Dr. Bronner's.
Boy, I wouldn't do that. That sounds like a bad day.
It's on the bottle.
Yeah, I've totally brushed my teeth with it.
Yeah,
it's on the bottle.
They say that. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think this is all stuff that it's part of designing these systems and figuring out, and it's going to be different for everyone, but it's a mindfulness practice too, and education that you have to kind of commit to. Like you said, what you're feeding the willow tree with the things that I like the name, the willow feeder. I wasn't clued into the name, the willow feeder system until you really broke it down. But I like the name for the system, because the idea is that we are feeding a willow with our wastewater. And
see, now it's not a waste anymore because you're feeding the willow.
Oh, I did have a question also about after the 2 years, when your candy has decomposed sufficiently, are you putting it on the root systems of the willow, or like in the mulch pit with chips on top, or like how are you spreading it on there?
First of all, we don't want it to decompose. We want to preserve it. We want to get it to. We want to make it so that when it gets to be 2 years old, that we have as much willow candy as possible.
Right.
So rather than it composting, we are kind of like trying to make poop jerky, or it's kind of like when you're trying to dry apricots. All right. It's like, I want to dry it out and save it. And so, however, when we open the can, it's usually only half full. So it did break down. It did decompose. And it did dry out. It's a lot lighter. And it's like, so then we lay it out, like usually about 2 to 3 feet away from the willow tree. And then we kind of spread it out to be about 2 inches thick. And then we lay sawdust on top of that, maybe about 1 inch thick of sawdust on top. And so, but I would choose to probably not put it over the mulch pit.
Right. That was my question. Yeah. Okay.
I kind of feel like, because if you did, then it would make it so that those wood chips would break down faster. And now, then we end up with it possibly needing to refill the pit or something. And so I kind of feel like, no, I'd rather put that around the willow tree, but usually a spot near the willow tree. I'll make a circle on the ground that's a few feet away from the willow tree, but still under the drip line, and rake it out to be like a couple inches thick, and then put sawdust over it. But when we empty the cans, it looks like earth mixed with sawdust. We don't see any toilet paper. We see nothing that we can identify. There's nothing, and it smells like earth. And so it has pretty well broken down, but not completely, which is our mission. Is we want to end up with as much carbon and nitrogen as possible to put on the soil to feed the willows. Whereas composting toilet systems, it's like, okay, let's have the bacteria break it down even more. Let's do all the things. So instead of the can being half full, it's like 10% full. And it's like almost all gone.
Right.
That's other systems are going to shoot for stuff like that.
Right. But we're really optimizing the poop as candy to feel. Well, I don't know if candy is a good word, though, because candy is nutritionally devoid. I mean, it's a fun word, but candy is not good for us to eat. And I feel like we're looking for nutrition for the willow, really, is what we're looking for. And that's why but I think it is fun. I was just like,
we're calling it willow candy. Now if you're concerned about sugar, let's take a look at the willow tree itself, and the xylem and the phloem. What's in the phloem? I believe it's sugar.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, like it's a tree. It's doing photosynthesis. It's making sugar from sunlight.
For sure. Of course.
Its life is about sugar. And so
True.
I think willow candy is okay for a willow tree.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So I like the idea that once you get to a point where you're saying, okay, everything you put down the drain is going to go to the willow tree. Now it helps to inspire us to be better.
Yeah.
Like let's dig deep into our values and figure out what is okay and what is not okay. Because when you're just hooked up to a sewage treatment plant, people will put anything down the drain, including some very horrible things. I mean, I would like to think that if it's going to go out to a willow tree in your laundry, you wouldn't use bleach anymore. And when it comes to what you are going to put in your laundry to clean your clothes, it's going to be things that the willow tree will enjoy, not things that will kill the willow tree. Same thing goes for the kitchen sink and the bathroom sink. So, and it's like, so, it helps us to raise all of our values. I would say that this is a weak spot in the willow feeder design, because and this is where it might not scale, because there might be some people that will not give up some of these poisons, like soaking their person in poisons on a daily basis is something that they are afraid to walk away from, even though, and they may not even be aware that it's making them sick.
Right.
All right. So,
cool.
Suze.
There's a lot to discuss. That's exciting. That's really exciting. Hey, thanks so much, Paul. I am feeling inspired, and I'm feeling inspired and excited, and like I can kind of wrap my head around figuring out something that's going to work for us here. And I'm excited that you're kind of right at the cusp of bringing this system, rolling it out to the general public more, and that I can kind of be a part of it in some small way, and maybe help inspire and educate other folks too to get that going as well.
I hope that this idea turns out to be as rock solid as I feel like it is right now. But of course, we need more testing, more examples of this running and things like that. And I hope that it's a stepping stone to solving global problems.
Do you have any? Do you have any contacts or folks that you're in touch with more of an urban homestead type situation like mine that have implemented systems like this? yet?
Urban. Nobody comes to mind, but I am surprised. I mean, we've talked about in the forums at Permies the willow feeder systems for a solid 12 years now, maybe longer. And
Right.
it does sound like there are people that have done things. I've heard of people doing something like having a business. I read somewhere where somebody had a business that was based on the willow feeder system, but their business was to provide an alternative to porta potties.
Ah,
And so
interesting.
then they would put the structures out with the cans, and then the cans would fill at an event, and then they would do the aging thing and then feed it to willow trees later.
I wonder if that's there's some folks up here. I don't know if they're Pacific Northwest. They're called Holy Shit. And they had this like, it was really interesting. They had a kind of like, they set it up like a temple to poop. And they even had like a poop altar. I mean, it was just wild. And they would be at these festivals and stuff. You probably would have loved it. You know, they had like flowers and like, you know, these really beautiful composting toilets. And I think they were, you know, they were the they also would have porta potties at these some of the festivals I saw them at, but they were kind of this like crew of Permies with their shit system. And it was kind of cool. And I'm pretty sure they were doing the willow tree thing.
Now,
but maybe that was them. They were an interesting group of folks for sure.
Yeah,
here's
here's
the thing
Yeah.
where you and I have knowledge of, and so maybe while you're here to fish this out because it's just delightful. You've been to Cobbville.
That's right.
Yeah, and they have a fascinating outhouse, let's call it.
It's wonderful. I love their outhouse.
So I think it's just an old school pit outhouse. And then in order to access it, there's like a stick on a trail. And if the stick is down, somebody else is there and you wait. But
That's
if
right.
the stick is not blocking the way, then you walk down the path and you get to a platform. And the platform is facing across this valley. And it's a small valley, but it's very lush there. So you're
Beautiful.
facing this very steep foresty thing that's on the other side of a creek. And there's nobody there, nobody around, and it's open. It's totally open. And so you're sitting and facing, I don't know, 20 acres of greenery, but I think it's pretty obvious that nobody's there. I don't think it would be very difficult for somebody to be over there. And then you do what you got to do. And
it's relaxing. It's very relaxing. Yeah.
When you head down the path, you might want to move the stick so that no one else surprises you.
Right. That's I think it was designed by a Danish. I can't remember what his name was. He was like a Danish fellow, like a compost toilet guy. I can't. Okay. He's a Danish guy. But I remember asking Yanto and Co about that because it's just such a nice. Oh, it's just a dreamy place to poop.
Yeah. And you kind of have this feeling of like, boy, I sure hope I have to poop again before I have to leave, you know, and because I want to poop there at least one more time before I go. And so, yeah. It was a beautiful thing,
It's such a sweet place. I really gotta get back there. I love Cobbville. Can't recommend. I mean, I don't even know if they're still doing workshops there lately or not, but it sure is nice. Yanto used to have this great workshop called Off the Treadmill.
Yeah.
Where he was working on inspiring folks to just kind of, you know, get off the treadmill, you know, and I just love that. This is in like a 3-day intensive workshop where he got people jazzed about, just getting off of it. Even just entertaining the idea that that's an option is a really wonderful thing. What a gift.
We have 9 people here in our boot camp right now. And last night, somebody asked the question of like, is the horticultural systems that I shoot for here, are they like Mark Shepard's stuff. Like, am I a devotee to Mark Shepard's work? And I said Mark Shepard's work is excellent, and I pick and choose all of his stuff that I love and bring it in to what I do. But I would have to say that my end game is very different. And so much like what you're talking about, the Antos thing about getting off the treadmill, I said, contemplate the idea of, because somebody was here once and they asked about how do you get permaculture apples into Safeway? And it's kind of like, well,
Sorry.
Mark Shepard is effectively kind of sort of doing that. He's getting his food products into a commodity market system. And so I talked about the movie Broken Limbs, which is about Central Washington and the apple industry there, and how so many people are going bankrupt with their apple orchards, and it's a very difficult business. And when you talk to the commodity market folks, they're saying, well, we're competing with the global markets in China, and so it's very difficult to compete with an apple where they can undercut us so easily. They could go down to 1/10 the price of what we need for our apples in order to pay the orchardists where we get our apples from. And so it's like we just can't compete. And then the movie goes into people who are selling their apples in a different way. And at the end of the movie, they have the best option, which is basically a permaculture system. And that person's getting a lot. And then I said, okay, now let's move beyond that. And I talked about like, okay, and then I kind of stepped it up, like, let's make more money and more money and more money and more money. And then I think a really great one is Sepulcher. And so Sepulcher charges $100 per person, and he gets 100 people a day. And then he gives them a short little tour, like, here's my stuff. And then he gets to his house and he says, all right, that's the end of the tour. Show yourselves out. Fuck off. And when you leave it, those people suddenly pull bags and shit out, and they fill their bags. They steal his food. And of course, the thing is Sepulcher stopped selling food because it's regulated. It's so overly regulated.
Right.
And so, but he's not selling food. He's selling tours. And then those people would steal his food. And so,
right. Air quotes. Right. Wonderful. Oh, it's so cool.
And so the average farmer in the United States has 1,000 acres, and they make $14,000 per year total. So $14 per acre. Whereas Sepulcher has 110 acres, and he's making $3 million a year just off of those tours. And so it's like, now let's see if we can go one step beyond that. And it's like, and that's what I call gratitude. And so it's something I wrote about in my Building a Better World book, but it's also an article out on Permies. And the idea is like, okay, you have a job, you have people who arrive at your house, and they have to be managed, and at least for a while. And if you stop doing it, your income goes down to zero. But the thing I'm trying to suggest is, and what happens if your income goes down to zero? You still would have some income because of all the food and all the other things and all the whatevers, but you've got this beautiful garden, and you can just watch the clouds pass all day and not have people come to your land. And the only people who ever come are your bestest friends. And you visit with them, and it's lovely and delightful. Every day is paradise. And so now what? Because if you make $3 million a year, that's kind of cool, but you also have to work every day. That kind of sucks. And so it's like, let's look at the scenario where you're not working anymore at all, and you don't have $3 million a year. And it's like,
Right.
that's not bad.
That's not
You
bad
know,
either.
you have
Mm.
really no expense because you're growing so much food, and you know, you have a humble home to live in, and everything's kind of, and if it's all naturally built, there's plenty more. There's the whole Home Depot on your acres. You don't need any more Home Depot. And so that's
Except for the containers for your willow feeder, you still need to go get those brute trash cans. Or I mean, I'm being devil's advocate, but yes,
and,
I love
right.
it.
And so it's like, how much is that? So over how much, what is your annual cost of maintaining a willow feeder system? Is
Right.
it less than $100 a year? Probably even less than $50 a year.
Right.
You got, like, let's say you got 5 or 6 people there. Is it less than $50 a year then? Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not much to it. But then when you have a Gertitude lifestyle, Gert still has an income. It's just not much, but she doesn't need much. Well, anyway, sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
That's good.
But
That's
you
good.
mentioned Eonto's getting off the treadmill thing, and I wanted to go a couple steps past Eonto's thing.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Do you think do you have a link to that article that we could put in the chat for this or something so folks can find it too? Is that possible?
So I mentioned a few different things, and so I suspect, like,
The
look at Samantha, she's already going. So we mentioned how to put permaculture apples into Safeway. That's one. Let's see. Well, and right now, Andreas has on the screen permies.com/WF. That's for our willow feeder stuff.
Right.
And then the article with Gertitude is going to be, are there millions of permaculture millionaires?
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's the title. Okay, so we can
Well,
find it.
The original article about Gertitude was the idea of, and the shortest possible version is that here's Gert living her permaculture dream life, and if I give her $1 million, she changes nothing. Her life continues on exactly the same.
That's cool.
And in that case, if the life is going to be exactly the same,
oh, there we go. There's the
can
link.
I call Gert a permaculture millionaire? She doesn't really have $1 million. But if her life's going to be the same, whether she has $1 million or doesn't, then I could choose to call her a permaculture millionaire.
That's awesome. I appreciate the tangent. I think it's good underpinning, like, big picture stuff. It's good to, talk about the specific things and then also think about the big picture. So I appreciate. Thanks for that. I like that.
Sure. All right. Are we wrapping up? We good? Covered enough? Do you have any other last minute questions?
There was a lingering question, and it's in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but it wasn't my personal question. It was someone else's question, but I'm not sure if that was something that we wanted to. It was about very cold temperature. Yeah, there it is.
We get down to -40 plus, have found that at -40, when the septic pumps out on the willow, it kills them. Just something for you to consider when designing in the cold.
Which doesn't apply to me, obviously, but.
Well, okay, septic pumps out. So if there's a septic system, I'm not sure why there's a willow. Is there a mulch pit? So, and if there's a pump, it must be going uphill. But I would say that, if it's going to get to -40, I would imagine that your drain field or mulch pit, whatever you're using, is going to have to be set up a little bit lower in the ground to protect it from freezing. And I wouldn't, in the way that this is phrased kind of makes it sound like it might be on the surface. So, it makes at 40 below, it makes an ice rink and runs onto the willows. Yeah, I wouldn't want any kind of system like this I would never put it on the surface. I would always like bring it to the willows or bring it to the mulch pit below the surface. Now, here in Montana, or at least my area of western Montana, our drain fields are set up at 18 inches below ground level, which I think is pretty standard. I don't know, maybe over when you get closer to the ocean, maybe it's not as deep as that. So I would, so 18 inches, it's like the idea is that it will probably never freeze. And if it does, it'll be very brief. But the microbial activity in the soil is still going to be plenty active. And it's like, that's the whole idea, is that you're going to have the poop Kool-Aid go out there to the drain field and drain, and then the microbials in the soil are going to gobble that all up, and they do a pretty good job, but not a perfect job. And pretty good is good enough, you know, when there's only one septic tank for a square mile. But when you start getting like more density, then it's like, hey, we should, you know, do one of those sewage treatment plant things. So there you go. Suze, was that satisfactory? Did you see anything else you wanted to address?
No, absolutely. I'm actually glad about the question about where, you know, that's a good little detail to keep in mind. Although I may be trying to find that ebook for more reference around building and designing our own systems, or maybe getting in touch and bugging you with some more details as we kind of start to like actually design and build our own. But you've basically got us pretty excited about the willow feeder system, and feeling inspired about figuring out how to implement it here in the Pacific Northwest on our little urban homestead.
I suggest that you start contemplating what all's going down the drain now and see if you can get it to be better. And it's going to take some transition.
It's a journey.
To be better. Yeah. But I think you'll be happier in the long run. Like, I'm glad we went through that.
100%.
All right. I think we're done. If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about willow feeders, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.
Thank you.